Tonight we're going to be changing the chain and sprockets and the cush drive on the Honda. Normally this has got a single-sided swing arm on the bike. You can see the whole rear wheel is exposed. On a normal motorcycle that does not have a single-sided swing arm, the cush drive will literally fall out when you take the rear wheel off. The sprocket just is kind of wedged in between the swing arm and it falls out. And every time you change the tire, you can inspect the cush drive. On this bike, it's not the case. There's one nut that holds the wheel on, and then the cush drive is actually back behind here. And if you see this play in the sprocket, you see how much, if I hold the tire and I move the sprocket, whoops, see that play? That's the cush drive is all worn. So we got to take that apart, get the cush drive, got a new cush drive for it, and then the chain and sprockets are going to be replaced. So I'm going to get my tools out and we'll get started. Alright, I've got all the preliminary stuff off. I've got the chain guard off and I've got the little tab. There's a little metal tab here that bolts onto the swing arm that shows you, number one, it's the rear mount for the chain guard, and it also shows you, there's a sticker here to show you how far back the chain has been adjusted, so it gets to a point where it says replace chain. It's kind of nice of them to do that. Front cover is off so we can get at the sprocket. Shifter mechanism's off. I really like the Honda single-sided swing arm. It's a beautiful design. It's unfortunate that they cover it up with this horrible hunk of plastic and stickers. So eventually I'd like to craft something. I mean, really all they need is just a cover here to keep your foot and pants out of the chain. This is a little overkill, so I might make something to kind of clean this back end up a little bit. And just for the record, I actually hate motorcycle chains. I hate chains. I swore after my Ducati I would never own a motorcycle with a chain again. The Ducati was a 900cc V-twin, and it had a lot of low-end torque, and it had a 520 chain on it, which was undersized. And I went through chain after chain after chain. I put about 40,000 miles on that bike, and I probably went through 8 sets of chains and sprockets. And at the last, I got stranded on it. It was the only bike I've ever got stranded on because the chain failed. And I said, that's it, no more chains. On the Ducati, I upgraded to a 525. I put a larger, most people go down in size for weight and centrifugal mass, but I actually went up to a 525, and then of course I sold the bike. From then on, I said no more chains, and I went to shaft drive at the Moto Guzzi, which I really liked. Love shaft drive. I even like belt drive. Belt drives are brilliant. And there's a guy in Germany that makes a belt drive for the Hawk. It's a conversion, and it's become similar to a Harley. It's a lot of money. It's certainly more money than the bike is worth, but if you want to get away from a chain, that's the way to do it. The downside is, with a chain, it's very easy to change your gear ratios. So going to the salt flats with this, I'm definitely going to leave a chain on. Number one, salt will tear up the belt. Number two, it'll be real easy to change gear ratios with the sprocket and chain. So for now, it's going to stay like this, but just for the record, I hate motorcycle chains. Got most of the bolts off, so what I did here is on the rear sprocket, I took all the bolts out that hold it in place. I also took this nut off that holds the axle assembly on, and this was, the nut is actually staked down. So instead of using a cotter pin or something like that, they actually just pin this over into the keyway slot to keep it from moving. Now when we do the salt flats has a requirement that these all must be safety wired. So I'm going to have to drill a hole in this bolt somehow. I'm not sure what we're going to safety wire it to, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I've also got the 2 bolts out of the front sprocket, and this is kind of a neat little device. This little retainer here is rotated halfway through the spline, so you basically rotate it halfway and pull it off, and that's what holds the sprocket in place. And then our sprocket should just slide right off. Kind of hard to do with one hand. It's also hard to do with the chain on. I'm going to have to break the chain off first. What else? Oh, there's the rear. So here's the rear sprocket. Oh, now we have enough slack in the chain to get the front one off. And then this hub comes off, exposing our cush drive. So I'm going to put this camera on. So here's our rear splined hub. And this cover see, there's the play in the cush drive right there. And this cover, there we go. And there's the cush drive. And they basically just fell out. Yeah, they're pretty bad. So, yeah, they're all cracked and broken, and they were definitely not doing their job. Another thing you notice, see the way this is actually on an eccentric circle? That's how you adjust the chain. And then you've got this little toothed plate back here. What you do is you loosen this pinch bolt, and you have a special tool that comes with the Honda toolkit, and you grab onto these notches here and rotate this concentric ring or eccentric ring, whatever you call it, and that changes the position of the axle in relation to the motor, so that lengthens or shortens your wheelbase, tightening or slacking your chain. So we'll take care of that once we get the new chain on. So now I should be able to pull the front sprocket off. Yep. Come on. There we go. All right, I've got the hub all cleaned up on the new cush drive in there. Little green rubbers of the cush drive. A little washer in here, spacer. Everything's cleaned up nice. We're going to put the mate to the hub back in there. And it should be fairly hard to push. We're going to squeeze this guy together. I might need and ultimately, once this is on, the spline shaft, the nut will tighten it all back down. So while I got this off, so I lubricated the spline with some moly paste, which is what Honda calls for to lube that spline. That's very important. And I cleaned this up a bit. Here's how our concentric ring works. So here's our special tool for adjusting the chain. And right now it's in the short wheelbase mode, or the chain in the newest position, so the most slack. And then as the chain wears, you rotate this down, and as you can see, whoops, hang on, let me put this down. And that's all the way to the chain's most tight position, or the longest wheelbase. So we're going to put it in the short wheelbase position because we're going to put a new chain on it. And then once we put the chain on, we'll have to adjust it a little bit to get it. I'm actually going to just take it off the seat because I don't want it all the way on the seat. Okay. What else? So we can put the spline, the hub back on, like so. And then if there's any slack in that cush drive, the nut will take out that slack. So here's the nut. Let me just clean this up. Oops, I made a mess there, didn't I? Yeah, so I also put some moly paste on the front spline for the new sprockets. And let me show you the new sprocket. So the original sprocket, or not the original, but the one that was on the bike, is an aluminum sprocket, and it's 45 teeth, which is, in some people's minds, an upgrade or an improvement from what Honda had originally The aluminum is lighter, less rotational mass, less weight on the bike, and the one size extra tooth gives you a larger diameter. So changing your gear ratio, which means you'll accelerate faster, but your top end will be slower, and at any given speed your RPMs are going to be higher, which I don't necessarily want. So I went back to the stock size 44 tooth sprocket. I also went back to steel. The steel lasts much longer than the aluminum. And my goal, again, is to go 100 miles an hour, so I need all the RPMs I can get. I have been over 100 miles an hour on this bike already, and the tack is pretty close to redline, so I wanted a little bit extra room there, so this will give me that. The front sprocket is the same size, so here's the original steel, and the new one is also steel, and it's 16 tooth, so that's just a direct replacement. All right, I'm going to clean this up a bit and then cut this chain off, and I'll be back. I've got the new sprockets on. Hub's all back together, tightened up nicely. No play now at all in the sprocket. I've got the front sprocket on, and now we're going to cut one of the rivets out of this chain out of here so that we can use our chain breaker tool and get this chain off. Here's our chain tool. This is fairly specialized, and you've got a bunch of different pins for various size chains. It's important that you use the right one. It's also important that you cut the head off like we did. Many people try and use the chain breaker tool to just push the rivet out, and it'll bend or break this pin. So you've got to insert the pin. This is a hollow end so that you're going to force the pin out this direction. So you put the plunger in, and you want it just, there we go, just until it starts to protrude through there. And we're going to clamp this mechanism on the actual chain. So here's the rivet that we cut off. We're going to put this on here. So that's how the chain tool goes on. And then we turn this guy so that we're driving that pin to push the chain apart. So you should feel it give when it finally, yeah, there we go. I just felt it, and now we're pushing the pin through. And it feels like we're on the way. So we'll take everything off. Now we're going to have to do this again on the new chain because the new chain is fairly generic sized, and we're probably going to have to cut some links out to make it appropriate for the bike. So we're pretty much, we can just break it out the rest of the way, and there we go. Chain is off. All right, ready for the new chain. New chain is on. I went with a little bling. It's gold, so I thought the gold would go good with the red, so we got a little bit of bling on the chain. So here's how the chain is generically sized from the manufacturer. They don't know how many links you need, so we're going to have to cut some links off this chain to make it work. And now this is a common mistake people make. I've got the chain lined up, and people want to cut here and try to join these two together, and that doesn't work. The master link requires a female and a female end as opposed to a male and female end. So we've either got to cut it back to here, which isn't going to work because I cannot get this link over one more tooth because it's too tight. The other option would be to cut it here, and then we'd have an extra slot to go back to with the master link, but we can take that up with the chain adjustment. So that's where I'm going to cut. And too tight is very bad. You never want a chain that's too tight. Too loose is actually, loose on the loose end is actually better. Right now, the swing arm is fully extended, so you've got the most slack possible. As the swing arm comes up, or as the bike goes down when the rider sits on it, the chain's actually going to get tighter. So we want it on the loose end of things. So I'm going to cut right here to join these two together. So we'll do the same thing with the Dremel, push that pin out, and then put our master link in. I've got the new chain, I pushed the pin out so we can separate this. This is an X-ring chain, so these little O-rings here are actually in the shape of an X if you were to do a cross-section of them. And supposedly the X-ring is the way to go. It holds more lubrication and is better overall. So now we can put our master link in. I've got the master link here. And this is a non-clip style. It's rivet. We have to mushroom these out when we install it, which is the method I prefer. I don't like master links with a clip in it because the clip can fly off and then you can lose your chain. So let's put this in. Oops, I forgot. I got to put new. They give you a bunch of lube. They give you a little packet of lube here, which we're going to put on the shafts of the new link, like so. And then we've got to put two new. Where'd they go? Here we are. They give us a new bag of X-rings for the master link. So X-ring there, X-ring there, a little more lube. More lube again. And X-rings on that side. And then we have to rivet our new plate in place. And I have to set up the tool for that. And then I'll explain that.